welcome back to Beyond Chronic Burnout, Flourish Forward, the podcast where we go beyond the surface of burnout, digging deep into the strategies and tools leaders and individuals need to create healthier, more resilient teams and lives. Joining me is Dr. Summer Watson, a powerhouse in leadership development and emotional intelligence. With over 21 years of experience as a military spouse and high performance coach, she knows a thing or two about handling high pressure environments. And as the founder of Core Women, she has dedicated her life to empowering leaders and organizations through cross generational mentorship, leadership development, and community building. In this episode, Dr. Watson is breaking down how mastering emotional agility can change the way you respond versus react, how to pause and respond with intention, and why community is the secret weapon to reducing burnout and isolation. Curious about how these strategies can transform your life and workplace? Summer and I had a great discussion that may have you rolling in your seat just like we were. Stay tuned. This is one conversation you won't want to miss.
Step out of the shadows, feel the power rise, catch the spark inside you, let your spirit fly, beyond the chronic burnout, carol dreams you'll guide, find your steady rhythm, life's joy on the tide, flourish forward, bright and bold, leave the burnout far behind, in this journey hearts unfold. Yours, seek and find.
I just love that fun intro song. It just always makes me dance. I got to get going.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. I was like, okay, I'm having a good time already.
I love that. I always want my guests to come in and just have a good time. Welcome to the show, Summer. I am so thrilled to have you. I have been excited to have you as a guest on the show because you, my friend, I would call the queen of community.
Oh,
You really are. You foster such beautiful spaces for women to really show up and be themselves, to
yeah.
have those conversations that change lives and that saves lives. And I think you do that so beautifully.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's really awesome. Thank you so much for recognizing that. I appreciate that.
Well, having been a guest on your show, I mean, it is just truly like the most blissful place to visit. I love
Oh,
it.
thank you.
I'm
Thanks so much.
hoping you have an equally wonderful experience here today.
Oh, I already am. So thank you, Carol Jean. Yes.
Oh, so Summer, as we talk about the context of community and connection, you know, one of the places that the show really embraces is all of us sharing our own experience of burnout and stress in our lives. And I know you said, "Oh, I've got one to share, Carol G." I'd love
Sure.
for you to share with everybody what has been that experience for you. What
Mhm.
did it feel like, and how did it show up? And did you recognize it?
Oh, wow. What a question. Thank you for that question. You know, as somebody who always does the interview, it's you never get asked these questions unless you're on somebody's show, right? And it's like, wow, so thank you for asking me that question. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. And yes, I've had that experience. I've had an experience. I was working as a director running multiple units in a hospital. So I was running 3 units and I was doing some teaching on the side at a university. And the problem was the hospital said, "Hey, you need to keep your phone on 24/7 and you can't turn it off. There's absolutely no turning it off. You will get in trouble." And I was just like, "Oh my God, are you serious?" So it didn't matter what I was doing, whether I was sleeping and it was 1 o'clock in the morning, or if it was I was going to get my hair done, or I was taking a walk with my dog, or it was always a phone call. And you have to understand one of the things that I did as a clinician, as a director, was run an admissions unit. And that's the first place where people come into the hospital. There's HIPAA laws, there's assessment issues, there's training, making sure that people are trained effectively and efficiently enough so that they can respond versus react. And I was new to the position, so there was a lot of reaction because they were adjusting, they were learning a new protocol, and so I was getting calls all the time. And so what happened was about the ninth or 10-month mark of being there, my body started really feeling it. And I started going to the doctor and I'm like, what is wrong with me? I'm feeling completely exhausted and my body feels just absolutely inflamed. They did all this testing and I found out that I had lupus. It had triggered lupus. And I was just like, okay, knowing I I was limited in my scope of what I could or couldn't do because at the time I was a military wife for 21 years. My husband was in the Marine Corps for 21 years. And so where we landed is where I got the job, right? And there was one mental health hospital in this area where we landed. And so I was just like, well, I need this job. Right. And so I'm not going to turn off my phone. I'm going to keep my phone on. I'm going to do A, B, and C. I'm going to, do these things where I need to respond to the needs, my own needs and my family's needs, but at what expense? To what expense? To what extent?
Oh, my absolute heart on that one. I just, I feel it.
Yeah.
I feel it.
Yeah.
There's so much, and I think that always on in healthcare is
Yeah.
something that we hear all the time.
Yeah.
I was in healthcare administration and I had 10 departments myself, and it was the worst burnout I ever experienced.
Yeah.
And this was when we were bringing hospitalists in, and this was when the scoring system for Medicare and Medicaid was first coming in, and they were saying, if you don't get all these stars, we're going to keep this money and we're not going to get it. And so everybody in the hospital system is, focused on these numbers and all
Yeah.
of these things. And it was, we're focusing on not doing any harm to all of the patients and the clients that we serve, but we were doing horrendous harm to ourselves. And how
Absolutely.
stress over time can activate autoimmune challenges and other things. Oh my gosh, yes. If you just heard Summer share and this is something that resonates with you, please reach out. She gets it. This is so important. Thank you so much for sharing that. When you got to that place of, okay, always on is not working, what did you start to think or do differently that brought you to where you are today?
Oh, well, I realized that I loved working in those settings. However, that might not have been the right setting for me at that time, especially since my body started to respond and overreact, really. And that's what lupus is. It's an overreaction of your physiology. And here's the thing, the interesting thing, Carol Jean, I work in mental health.
That's where it always gets all of us.
It's your mental
It's like,
and
I can't
physical.
possibly not be okay because I'm okay.
I have to be okay. I am okay. I need to be okay for my staff. I need to be okay for my consumers. I need to be okay for, you know, my family. How am I juggling it? And so to get real about that and what that means to you, it's like, all right, Summer, you got to start thinking about your own boundaries here. What are your boundaries? We always ask folks to think about how they set boundaries on others, but how are you setting boundaries on yourself? And not to the degree that I'm saying don't do this or stop yourself from, but be realistic. Understand what you can handle and what you can juggle. It's kind of like that analogy with the airplane mask. You don't put on somebody else's first, you put on your own so that you have the oxygen to be able to help somebody with their oxygen, right? Once your oxygen is depleted, oxygen is life. If it's depleted, you're no longer here. Put your own mask on. Start understanding what that looks like, what that feels like, because it's not just, you know, oh my gosh, I'm feeling stressed, but that's affecting your whole physiology from mind and body, right? And so I had to take a step back, evaluate what was going on, and make some changes, some quick changes, because I was dealing with some major inflammation in my body. And I thought, this can't continue as much as I love this. But what can I do to continue doing something that I love? And so I switched. I don't use this word much, but I pivoted and made that switch and that transition over to higher education. And I started teaching for one of the local colleges. And so that was allowed my body and my brain to rest and also give back to the community as well. And I worked for a community college and I absolutely loved it. I've worked for private universities, I've done different things, but this was a great experience. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have learners from all backgrounds, from those who are looking at getting into a 4-year college and doing their first 2 years at a JC, or those who are trying to add to their skill set, who are a bit older. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it because the people that were at the junior college wanted to be there. They wanted to learn. They were excited to learn. And so when people, other professors or directors of different departments would come in and audit the class, they would say, "Oh my gosh, it's so engaging. You're building out your community here. This is at the community college." I was like, "Yay, I'm doing something that I love." And hopefully we'll get into talking about community building because it's something I love.
And you know what I think is just such a beautiful thing about the story and just your experience and the journey that you took here was that it was through the challenge and the contrast that gave you this clarity. And then through that pivot, I'm like you, I don't use it
Yeah.
very often. Through the pivot, it was like, oh, I found my joy and my bliss. Like what really resonates with the
Yeah.
things that I value. And
Yeah.
I love KORE, core
Yeah.
women. Can you tell us what each of these letters stands for in core?
Absolutely. So, as I was developing Core Women, and there's a backstory here. Let me just tell a quick backstory. So, my husband and I moved. He retired from the Marine Corps, and he got picked up by the federal government to for a job. And so we moved, and I thought, what am I going to do with myself? How am I going to take all this knowledge, skills, abilities, and bring them forward? And I thought, aha, I'll create a business. I'll create a business that builds community. And so I thought about core, our core in our body, our core values, like all these different things. And I thought this is the perfect word, core. So it's how we as humans kinetically connect as we move through the world. And as we are going so quickly, how are we actually kinetically connecting? How is our energy connecting? What does that feel like, right? And how are we organically learning from one another through programs, through hearing, by listening, by all these different things, by mentorship? How do we organically learn from one another? How do we reshape our lives through diverse interaction? Everybody is so unique and so diverse. If you allow for it to embrace it, how are you reshaping your life through that means, right? And then how are we empowering others to promote change? How are we lifting them up in their mission? So,
Yes, yes, yes. You guys are hearing this, right? You know why I love and adore this woman right here. That's her heart. Her heart is just oh, this is
oh,
just beautiful.
thank
It's
you.
such it's such a needed place. We hear these big conversations, around mental health, psychological safety. How are we creating this within environments and culture at work? And so often it's how are we also just doing this under our own roof?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
all of this. How are we just doing this one to another? Because that kinetic piece is we are all interconnected. We engage and interact with people all day long when you get gas, when you buy groceries, and it's all of that is the connection that builds community.
Yeah.
Mm. So beautiful. Summer, I would love for you to share with us around emotional agility, because I think when we're talking about connection and community, and in the context of stress and burnout, from my perspective, in the view, in the conversations that I have around stress and burnout for neurodivergent and disabled people, one of the big things is emotional dysregulation under great or long-term stress and burnout.
Mhm.
And I love that, as this was something I discovered, when I finally got out of burnout after 40, almost 40 years of being in
Yeah.
some degree of burnout. After about 2.5 years of a steady state, I was starting to recognize, wow, my emotions feel more in control. They're not so extreme. They're not all over the place. But even with alexithymia, I'm able to identify and just be comfortable with uncomfortable emotions. So I can't wait to hear sort of your take on emotional agility, and how does this play into our community and connection?
Okay. So before I get into defining emotional agility, I want to take a step back here and really identify something really that people might think, wow, this is so elementary, but I'm going to ask you, what are emotions? What are emotions? It might sound so simple, but what are they? And emotions really are a conscious mental state, such as sadness, joy, anger, confusion, where we are subjectively experiencing strong feelings, right? Feelings usually directed somewhere at ourselves, at others, at an organization, and it's typical that it is combined with a physiological reaction. So we might be consciously aware that we're feeling a certain way, directed towards something or ourselves, and then how is it affecting our body, our brains, and our body, right? So I start with that because it is important to know what is emotion. And then we go into emotional agility, right? And emotional agility really involves how we manage those emotions while we're in a state of joy, a state of anger, a state of fear, a state of being, right? And how we're consciously adapting that or being agile to that. It is more along the lines of a response, that agility, versus a reaction. And it takes some time to understand what that is, because then you have what is called adaptive responsiveness. And sometimes we aren't adaptively responding because we're reacting. And in a reaction, I laugh because I go back to like my law school, and you would know this too, Carol Jean, your law school training of manslaughter versus murder.
Right.
I know this is kind of like a severe example, but it's like
I love it.
something's premeditated and you have a goal, right? And then manslaughter is more like a reaction, right? And it's because that time in law school for me too, I was like, okay, how do I correlate this, right? So that manslaughter is it's a reaction. You're not thinking about the end result, it's a response, right? It's like boom. The the response is like premeditated. It's like, what do I want to achieve? What are my end goals? So how can I be adaptive in my response to in my communication towards an individual or towards a community? So there's that difference. There's that emotional agility of how are you managing your emotions in a constructive way, and then how are you adapting those emotions to reach an end goal.
Oh,
So
that is such a place of personal power to be able to be
yeah.
responsive and emotionally agile.
Absolutely. Now, here's the thing. This goes back into I'm going to reach back into my clinical bag, okay? Because if there's one person
Go for it. I love this. Mine's kind of designer.
I like pulling from all these different unique perspectives because they're part of my tool bag, right? I've been there, I've done it, I've experienced it, and I want to share it. And it also helps build the community around me by understanding these concepts, right? And understanding how they're applied more importantly, right? So, one of the things that I learned early on in my career, my clinical profession, was how do I develop connection with people? How do I develop that connection where we're building that community, right? And I know this is something we're going to talk about. Like you had mentioned earlier, but one of the people that really resonated with me as I started learning about psychology and we started learning about Freud and we started learning about the other theorists. These theorists, these people, these doctors were researchers, and they were also drawn to the profession for different reasons because they went through their own things, right? And so I feel like we're all drawn to something once we realize it, like, aha, we're drawn here because this is this is solving an issue for me, or this is giving me more clarity, or this is really part of my passion. So one of those people that I really connected with as I was learning about these different therapists and doctors was Alfred Adler.
Unlock your schedule for success and harmony. As we dive into quarter four, are you feeling the pressure to wrap up the year on a high note? With KPIs to meet and goals to complete, it can feel like your time is slipping through your fingers, leaving little room for what truly matters. Now, add in the hustle and bustle of the upcoming holidays, more social events, family gatherings, and endless demands. Imagine having the tools to take charge of your day and align your professional and personal goals. Introducing Optimize Your Schedule for Work Life Success and Harmony, a 2-day interactive workshop designed just for leaders like you. I understand the unique challenges you face this season, juggling leadership responsibilities while managing projects efficiently during the busiest time of year. In this workshop, you'll discover improved decision making skills to refine your schedule, enhanced delegation techniques for better task management, strategies to regain control over your daily routine, insights into overcoming that internal resistance that affects your energy and relationships. Join us and walk away with a personalized plan that brings clarity and focus to your life, allowing you to finish the year strong. Ready to transform how you approach each day, even amidst the holiday chaos? Find out more and start your journey towards a harmonious work life experience. Click the link in the description to register today or go to whittingtonwellbeing.com.
Now, Adler was he deviated from Freud, and he said, listen, not everything is about your subconscious, right? Not everything is psychosexual
It's not all about your mother.
or your libido, right? So it's like,
Right.
so, so it's there are other things. And I want to look at this from a more holistic perspective. I want to look at this from a place where people start fading in their purpose or feeling like they're striving for purpose, but where is that point of discouragement? And that's where really Alfred Adler came from. He said, when we start seeing somebody who is anxious or depressing, it's usually at a point of discouragement. And that's where we become separated as humans, where there's some kind of disconnect. And so Alfred also was a humanist. And he said, we are not just one thing. What makes us up is many things. So as we look at human beings and their functioning, it's not based on one thing and go, somebody might say, oh my gosh, it's because they're overwhelmed with school. And that is exact. Well, I don't think that's the only thing. So let's not discount the multiple things that are happening in that person's life that are influencing that person's functioning. right? And so I draw from Adler when it comes to looking at people and organizations from a holistic perspective. I look to Adler when I think that I need to talk to somebody because they're feeling discouraged, because maybe that was their point. There was somewhere there was a point of discouragement or lack of purpose, right? So when we talk about all these things, it's about what is our purpose? Because in as we look at human functioning, as we look at ourselves as human beings, we've always been part of a collective of sorts. Even if you go back into history, we needed each other for survival. We needed each other to survive, to eat, to survive, to grow our crops, to survive, and we needed that collective. We needed to learn from each other. We needed to survive with each other. But now we're at a point where we're so advanced, we don't just have to survive, we can thrive.
Oh gosh, yes. So for you,
Yeah,
if we talk about emotional agility and we
right.
talk about like adaptive responsiveness
Sure.
within the context of connection and community, because you shared something just then that immediately, sparked this place that I've really been reflecting on a lot, especially since, we were all in lockdown during the pandemic.
Yeah,
And I think it became very prominent that we became aware of these things. And, with the latest strike on the ports and the delay in delivery, somehow we have this messaging that's going around the world and has been, I think, probably since industrial revolution started, which was we have to be independent as adults. You can't rely on anybody else. You got to be able to do everything for yourself. And it's such a huge misconception because you go to the grocery store and you buy that chicken or you buy a box of cereal, someone else has had a hand in making sure that that got to you where it was available. And we're
yeah,
so far removed from the connection and the community, the collaborative nature of our survival as well as our thrival.
yeah, right.
Right?
Yeah.
So how do we use emotional agility in that adaptive responsiveness? And I know you've got some insights on adaptive responsiveness.
Mhm.
In how do we start to bring this in when we're really kind of coming from this broken narrative that you should be able to adult on your own and do it by yourself?
Right. I think that conditioning has been set, and it has been set deeply into our beings because that's what's been told to us year after year after year, right? You can't count on me. You have to do it on your own. I was told that by my own father. Like, don't count on me. Do that on your own. And yet I learned that, but that was at that point of survival, right? Because I can't count on you. I can't count on you. But guess what? When people were immigrating into this country, they built communities. If you look at New York and people were coming in to Ellis Island, they were starting to build boroughs and communities because they knew they needed one another. They needed one another to produce businesses, to produce communities and connections and resources to talk to one another, to understand one another. There were commonalities, right? So over history, we might think we need to do it on our own, but in reality, people have gotten so much further when they did it as a community, a collective of sorts. And so when you asked about adaptive responsiveness, it's you go back to that conditioning, those thoughts, those behaviors, your emotions, and becoming more aware. And when you can become more aware of where you are and being, how you're feeling, you can learn how to be more adaptive in your response, meaning how are you going to respond and thrive versus react? And so, what does that look like for you? What does that feel like for you? How can you think of your habits or your protocol or your procedure in a way that you want to reach an end goal. Because is that reaction going to get you to that end goal? Probably not. If you're reactive, like in the manslaughter case, right? Or situation that we're talking about, no, you've got manslaughter because you were reactive and didn't think about the end goal or where you wanted to be, right? It's you just went for it. And it's not to say that you can't just go for creating a business. You can't just go for that next goal. But when you're feeling so overwhelmed, you're feeling overcome, you're feeling like you're not meeting that A, B, or C goal, you're feeling at a point of disillusion or feeling disparaged or feeling just sad, right? Or feeling or being those feelings or a point of discouragement, then what about taking that adaptive responsiveness and saying, listen, Summer, you know, let's get real. Where are you right now? Can you be silent and just be in your feelings right now? What does that feel like? What does your body feel like? What does your brain feel like? Can you just be? And a lot of times people aren't accustomed to being. It's like that, what we talked about earlier. It's like that quiet space. People want to fill up that quiet space. It's you don't have to fill up that quiet space. You can sit there in that quiet space and see how it feels. Feel what it means. And while you're there and you're feeling that and it's kind of uncomfortable, it will become more comfortable. You will become more used to it. You will become more equalized to that feeling of, okay, I know where I stand. I know what it feels like to be. Now, you're feeling all of this, or maybe even you've used some breathing techniques or you use some journaling techniques to be just to be, right? To work through what it is and what it feels like and what it means to be versus having to do, do. So once you've worked at that and you've gotten some sense of equalization, some equilibrium, right? Then it's how can I respond to A, B, or C in a way that I'm going to be able to reach this goal or I'm going to be able to re-strategize because guess what? And you've all heard this idiom to some degree, I'm sure. If we do the same things, we get the same results. So it's difficult to change those habits, to change those patterns. But if you start with recognizing your feelings, that's going to help produce that adaptive responsiveness, right? If you're okay, if you allow yourself to sit in what you're feeling right now, to be able to understand it better, identify it, and say, okay, now I'm ready to look at these issues a little bit more clearly because I'm in alignment. I I'm okay. I'm okay with feeling this way, but do I want to continue to feel this way? Let me give you an example, Carol Jean. So if I feel like sunk, if I feel like, oh, I'm discouraged today, I give myself a day, 24 hours. This is how I do it. This doesn't mean this is the way you have to do it, but this is how I've done it and it works for me. All right, Summer, if you're really feeling discombobulated, if you're really feeling out of sorts about something, you're going to get 24 hours to just feel that way. And it was a really weird thing. When Eddie Van Halen passed away, I was like a huge Van Halen fan. This is getting real, right? And I was just like, I'm so sad. And I don't even know why I'm so sad. And it was because there was so much emotion attached to that music for me. It brought up so many memories. I felt like I was losing part of those memories. I was losing a part of my youth. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is really impacting me. And my husband's like, what is wrong? I'm like, I'm so sad. I'm just so sad. And I don't get that way, really. I usually don't get that way. And I thought, but you know what? I'm going to sit in this. I'm going to sit in this for 24 hours. And then tomorrow, you're going to work your way out of this. You're going to come up with a different plan. You're going to listen to some other music that brings you those same feelings. You're going to, and so that's what adaptive responsiveness is. It's sit in those feelings. And that's why I went back to understanding emotions. What are emotions? That can sound so simple, but what are they? and how do you experience those emotions? And then we go to into adaptive responsiveness. It doesn't happen overnight, and it takes some practice.
Oh man, this is such goodness. This is such goodness. And by the way, I'm with you on Eddie V.
Yeah. Oh,
I mean that was the big one. I was
that
like,
was a big
oh,
one. I know.
it really was. It's the big one, Elizabeth. But when we talk about when we're when we're in burnout and or we've been in long-term
Yes.
burnout, chronic stress cycles, that emotional agility is really hard when you've been so depleted because you get into this habit like you were talking about of this reactive state and just being able to pause in that adaptive responsiveness. I mean, this it was one of the biggest things for me. Like I love how you said I just give myself 24 hours. That was so huge for me. It's like I just started by saying, I know that my body is feeling all these big things and they're happening. It feels like there's tons of them and I have no idea what they are and they don't feel safe or comfortable because I can't identify them yet. I'm just going to allow myself to just not know yet,
Yeah.
not know yet. And it's just that pause because here's the question, folks. And I'll just boil it down. When you don't have emotional agility and you're not in a place of understanding there's a place of adaptive responsive, take the pause, right? The power of the pause here. Then are you going around through life committing murder all over the place with your emotions because they're contagious? Right? I mean,
Yeah.
are we
Yes.
just running around committing murder all over the
Oh,
place with our emotional?
right. And that's a great way of putting it, Carol Jean, is that, since I brought up that analogy, I love the way you just put that because it's true. We can do that with our emotions and we can go and we can be a whirlwind of terror with our emotions. And it's like, is that where you really want to be?
Well,
And there's a
and
way
I
to work
think we
through that.
stand there, right? And we
Yeah.
stand there, and I think this is the part that I love about what you do. And while we're talking about community and connection, is because when we're in that place and we're out there committing, emotional murder all over the place, we're actually also disconnecting because people will disconnect from us and we will
Yeah.
disconnect from them. We will be burning bridges all over the place
Yeah.
and we end up isolated, which really perpetuates depression and burnout and all of the things that we're talking about here today,
Yeah.
which are the benefits of connection and community. Where do we go from here in developing community? If we've been in that place of like, oh my gosh, you've just realized you've committed emotional murder all over the place in your life, y'all. It's okay. I did it too. You're not alone. I
Yeah.
burnt bridges and blew stuff up all over the place because I was so burnt out.
Well,
Then how do we start to garner that back in our life if we're going, this is not what I want?
oh, such a good question. And I have just short time now, but it's I would say that building community breaks down silos. Building community and reaching out to one person, reaching out to many people helps really reduce those silos, helps boost your focus, helps get you connected. And that feeling, those feelings, when you start connecting with community, helps really create momentum for feeling better, for feeling connected. And I think we became so connected, especially during COVID, right? And there's still some of that disconnect. And yet there's ways to work on that, taking baby steps. It doesn't mean you need to go out and, reach everybody today. It means talk to one person. If you haven't talked to somebody in a long time and you're feeling the need to talk to them, make a list of those people and then reach out to one of those people a day. Or, if you are feeling disconnected because you're not getting someplace in your profession or with your business, become part of a community where there are like um, where there are commonalities, where you want to learn from other people, where you can learn about new resources. So there are a lot of different things that you can actually do to get community connected, start building the community around you, and also being transparent, telling your story, because we all have one. We really do all have one.
We do. So, you have a new program coming up, and I would love for you to share how people can join you.
Okay, Core Mentorship Solutions. Go to my webpage at corewomen.com. And from there, you can really learn about Core Mentorship Solutions. It is a mentorship slash leadership program for companies to help them really build their mentorship programs as well as leadership. Here's the analogy. When working in mental health, somebody might come to me and say, "Oh, my kid, I know they're ADHD. I know it." And I'll say, "Okay, tell me more. Why do you think that?" Because the kid across the street is exhibiting A, B, and C, and my kid does just the same thing. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, let's have a chat. Let's have a talk." And so we do our evaluation, we do the assessment, and we say, okay, there's some traits that we're recognizing, and there might be a benefit to medicine, but maybe not, but this is an option. But I will say this, the treatment, medical treatment, doesn't go without the behavior modification. And that's where the leadership comes in. Because guess what? The reaction is, let's put them on medicine, right? The response is, let's change them this behavior so they're functioning in the world in a more productive, effective way that's healthier and happier for them and for the family and for the community as a whole. So that's how this mentorship program is really built, the Core Mentorship Solutions program. It's a cross-generational mentorship program that really is going to help connect the generations in the workforce because there's five. Generally speaking, there are five. The traditionalists all the way to the Zs. That means the people that were born in the 40s are still out there working, and they're in their 70s now. And then we have these 15-year-olds, 15 and a half year olds who are just starting out. So we've got a lot of different values, a lot of different beliefs, and yet there's still a disconnect between understanding one another and making assumptions. So Core Mentorship Solutions is about building these connections, bridging gaps between the generations, as well as leadership training.
So fabulous. Thank you so
Thank you.
much for being a guest today, talking about all of the elements of community and connection and how this really transforms the quality of our daily lives. Dr. Summer
Yeah.
Watson, thank you for being with us today. Gratitude flows as we come to the end of another incredible episode of Beyond Chronic Burnout. Thank you for being part of this life giving journey. I'm Carol Jean Whittington, and I'm inspired by your commitment to growth and restoration. Keep applying these insights to your life, and remember, we're here every step of the way together. Share this podcast with others who could use a boost of energy and to know that they're not alone. Let's create a ripple effect of compassionate curiosity about who we are. Until next time, take care, stay energized, and keep thriving, my friend.
Thanks for being here. It's been quite a ride. Energy mastery, let's turn the tide. Top shelf guests, dropping wisdom bombs. Join us next week, where the energy's strong. Beyond chronic.